So, in the MHA community, there's been a long time train of thought. Some hold that the story would have been better, or at least there being some interest in the story revolving around Deku being a quirkless hero. This would be either through rigorous training to strengthen his body, mastering a weapon, or making use of support items to fill the gap of quirk. This train of thought sprung back into many's minds as of recent due to All Might fighting All for One without the strength of One for All, but instead, a full body support item suit that implemented the effects of different powers using technology. It also at a point saw a rise during the Vigilante spin-off's run due to Knuckle Duster being a Vigilante without a quirk. Though none of this has convinced me Powerless heroes are a good idea, and I'll explain why now. First off, genetics. Quirk users are essentially built different. I believe the genes they possess do more than just grant them powers, but that the presence in the body itself makes it so the potential heights that can be reached are higher, and the feats could pull off would be greater. My examples lie with Stain, Bakugo, and Tailman. Stain's quirk is Blood Curdle, an ability to paralyze a person whose blood he's ingested for varying amounts of time depending on a blood type. With his non-combat or strength-based quirk, he's been seen greatly outspeeding and maneuvering the trio of Izuku, Todoroki, and Ida. He's also managed to kill 40 professional heroes, as well as incapacitate 2, those being Native and Tensei's Ingenium. Bakugo wields Explosion, the ability to combust his sweat, which has properties of nitroglycerin. His quirk, while more destructive, and can be considered a combat quirk, is not one built around enhancing his body's physical power. Even so, we know that he has to strengthen his body to be able to handle bigger explosions, and he's been seen pulling off explosions on the scale of his specialized gauntlets naturally, if with some strain. Also, in a second fight with Midoriya, we see him taking and trading blows with Izuku and his physically enhancing quirk. And finally, Ojiro, the Tailman. His tail has been seen withstanding multiple attacks from Class 1B's Kaibara and his drill arms. Now, his tail is his quirk, but it is, at the end of the day, as simple as an extra appendage. A strong one, considering it could take the attacks, but it's just about as thick as a large leg, and there's nothing said about the skin around it being more dexterous than the rest of his body, which in itself is pretty strong as we saw him pull off some impressive gymnastics and martial arts. All of these are essentially me getting to the point that the natural strength of a quirk user can be pretty high. Of course, there's a chance that non-quirk users can train in a similar way, maybe a non-powered person training in the same way Stain did, and they may possibly be able to obtain some similar skill, but there's been no proof of such. Calm down, Vigilante readers, I'll get to him. But anyway, some quirk users can still be hurt by stuff like guns or blades, and not all heroes or heroes in training have shown particularly amazing feats of physical strength, but still, better to invest in those with powers and physical potential better suited to fighting other superpowered individuals. Even with support items, those are made with the specific goal in mind to support the quirks of heroes. And that brings me to my second point, resource allocation. Many people with the reveal of All Might's Iron Man as super suit have wondered why there aren't more, or why this treatment couldn't have been put toward Izuku and that could have been a route toward a quirkless hero story. The problem with that is how and why he'd get that. If Izuku were to get into the hero exams with technology substituting abilities, he'd either have to be super smart and build it by himself with scraps or anything lying around, or super rich with money to fund the project. Either way, an average kid's not becoming a hero that way. As for support items, some may be thinking about this like Syndrome, but it would be so hard to make everyone super. It makes more sense to enhance already super people rather than trying to empower non-quirk users. It wouldn't be cost effective to just start making gear to be bought by everyone like clothing brands unless they're marketed to specifically richer folk or maybe ministries of defense. We have seen stuff like the Jets and the Stars and Stripes versus Shigaraki fight, so we know there have still been advances in military might in face of quirks, which isn't surprising. If it was given to a trained commando, then making a supersuit for them might make some sense, though the non-quirk body might still have some issue keeping up in certain areas. And now to go further into the only situation where we have in fact seen a quirkless person with a supersuit, as well as a vigilante without a quirk. All Might and Knuckle Duster. So many will likely bring up these two in terms of making a case for powerless heroes, as both lost their quirks after encounters with All for One, but at a later point went back to crime fighting. Though with these two, the reasoning is pretty easy, in that they were both already pro heroes. They may have lost their powers, but they still had the experience and all that came with it from their years of hero work. They had a sense for it. To build on them individually, Knuckle Duster had a speed-based quirk, meaning he was already used to high-speed thinking and maneuvers that outpaced his opponents, so even without his quirk, he still has that battle sense spring into his fights with villains. In terms of his body, it's still naturally the body of a quirk holder, meaning my point earlier applies here, as even without the actual ability, his body still should have the capability and genealogy that would make him stronger than the average person, as well as him not losing the strength of his body that was honed to keep up with his quirk in the first place. And for All Might, again, experience, but his physical strength isn't exactly the same league as Knuckle Duster's. Though my earlier points do bleed into him being able to get the Iron Man suit. First off, he's All Might. He has the clout to be able to make a request such as an Iron Man suit, and he's got the experience needed to be trusted with using such a thing during hero work. And the gadgets embedded within the suit are all based on the quirks of his students, who he looked after while they got their quirks stronger and mentored them on their application. And though his weaker frame does make it not great if his armor is penetrated, with it being All Might, he could probably deal with most criminals, but he was going against the baddest of the bad while they were getting younger by the second. Still, put up a good fight though, but that's with the decades of experience. And it is by no means a way of advocacy for quirkless heroes, but rather just another reason to love All Might.